Welcome back. Welcome back, CMDC. The last time we were together was November. Just a reminder, we take December and January off for our wonderful volunteers team. So happy to be back with our community. My name is Kaylee. I am officially now our host for CMDC. All right. Today we are getting into layers. I thought, wouldn't it be cute or meta or very literal for us to do layers of the community? So that is what we are doing. Really excited to have three speakers today who are all very curious in our culture, in our community, an exploration of the many layers that we have in DC. This theme was brought to us by, I'm sorry, I forget what chapter. The illustration is by Catherine Olivia Pearson, and it's beautiful. We are sponsored globally by Adobe. Yay, everybody knows what Adobe is, right? No, we're not going to say what's Adobe. We all know what Adobe is. It's wonderful. This is our global sponsor for Creative Mornings. So a lot of the gatherings that we have around the world are happening because of this. And a bonus, Adobe Express is a quick and easy everything app. It is free now to download, and you are encouraged to do so. So go and get your creative free expression on. Enjoy it. We, in our chapter, DC, we are sponsored by Plants Alive and Charlestown AV. Shout out to Jeremy in the back, our awesome cameraman. Charlestown AV provides us the recordings so that we can have our presentations on our website, and this is the generosity that they're providing us. Plants Alive gives us the opportunity to have ASL interpretation when requested. Again, if you need it, request it, let us know. And for the first time ever, so excited to announce our title sponsorship for the year. Taste. Taste is a specialty coffee roaster and product co-created by our very own Jason Reynolds, Reggie Black, and Obi Akolo. It's an invitation, first, to a good cup of coffee, to ritual, to story, to love, to gather. An invitation to all the shit we take for granted, but need now more than ever. So thank you to Taste for supporting all of our gatherings for this year. And I'm going to say this a couple of times. Go get your coffee at tastecoffee.com. That's TASTCOFFEE.com. Yes, we love Taste. Thank you very much. Yes, go ahead. He's right there. Give him the love. And we wouldn't be here, literally here in this wonderful space today, if it wasn't for the Planet Word team once again inviting us back. Please, come on. A very big shout out to Alicia. Thank you for welcoming us back. We love being in this space. This is a great kickoff space for us, so much, much, much appreciated. As you know, reminder, this is a free event, and we are a volunteer team, and our venues are volunteer sponsors as well, so thank you. Quick little note, while we're here, the galleries are open when we finish. You are recommended to start at the 3rd floor and work your way down. And a little fun fact, one of our speakers today, the lovely Fa, was a big part of the Spanish language book collection on the 2nd floor. So, do enjoy. Okay. Team, I warned you several times that I was going to embarrass you. So, here we go. Yes, this is a volunteer endeavor of love. These are the people that make it happen. Really, it is not me, I'm telling you. These are the people that make it happen. Okay, so, Colleen is not here. Colleen sends her love. Tyler. Tyler is my right hand. He does everything. He does our finances, literally everything. HM. HM is our social media maven. So when you ask questions in the comment section, you are blowing up her phone and then subsequently blowing up mine. We love it. HM. We know. OB is like my security blanket, getting me through this. Steven, our brand new photographer, first time. Welcome to the team. Shinji, woo! Okay, I believe our first ever house DJ for CMDC. So that playlist we were jamming to on the way in, that is available on Spotify. Go and check it out. Shinji is making us a curated playlist for each theme. They will be there on Spotify. And we'll talk about this later. Our house DJ for our birthday party next month. Woo! Helena, you must stand up. Woo! Our wonderful email maven / tech troubleshooter, because I'm terrible at it. Thank you. Amari. Very important. This email down here at the bottom, if you want to join our volunteer team, if you want to be a day of volunteer, Amari is the guy. Mackenzie. Woo! All of these beautiful slides. I am not a creator, guys. I'm not one of you. I support you. I am not one of you. All of this is Mackenzie. Thank you so much. And then Lena, also not here, but our resident caffeinator, the caffeine we all consumed on our way in. Woo, we love it. Okay. We won't do this every time, but I wanted to start the year with a lot of love to this team because this does not happen without them. So please, one more time, big love for this team. Okay, field trips, they are virtual. Check your emails, all the links are in there. And this slide is not updated. There are more chapters than this. I don't know why headquarters doesn't update this slide. There's like 260 plus now. We are all over the world, okay? The point of this slide is that we are all here, we all love each other, and we're also all around the world. So usually the second to last or the last Friday of the month, 260 chapters around the globe are talking about the same theme. Creatives are getting together. We're doing it. We're thriving. We're surviving. We're making it through. Okay, yes. How did this happen? How are we doing this for 12 years? Because you come, you bring a friend, you make a friend. We love our community. I do have one note here. So I know it's cold and we had a little bit of drop off. That's normal. We had 169 tickets sold for our 150 seat space, and 92 the last time I checked, which was like 6 o'clock last night, on the wait list. So what does that mean? When you get your emails that say, hey, are you not going to show up? Would you like to release your ticket? Please do, because we want to bring our friends. We want to give everybody a chance to be here. So we love you. Come, bring your friend, show up. But also, if you're not going to show up, just release your ticket so somebody else can, okay? All right, finally, we are not here to see me babbling through this intro on stage. We are here for these amazing speakers. So excited. We're going to keep this really short because we are all good registration folks, and we read the bios when we click the button, so you don't need me to stand up here and do this. We have 3 amazing creatives, curators, artists in our community who are curious, who are committed to the people in this room and the people not in this room, and are going to share their version, their view of layers. We are going to hold our questions until the very last speaker. We will do all Q&A at once before we wrap up. So, without further ado, our first speaker, my friend, Caitlin Berry.
Good morning. You say it again? Yeah. I'm Caitlin Berry. I was born in Alabama, raised in North Carolina. Thank you, Kaylee. Sorry, I'm so tall. Sorry, guys. Okay. Born in Alabama, raised in North Carolina, and I did indeed lose most of my southern accent somewhere along the way. This little girl, covered in paint, is me at 2 in my parents' living room in Birmingham. And it was pretty clear from day one that I loved art. I am a DMV resident by way of New York City, and I love this place deep down in my soul. I've worked in the art world my whole career. Galleries, museums, universities. I've run my own business and have always centered artists because nothing of this exists without them. I've long admired Creative Mornings and passively imagined what brilliant talk I would give if I was ever given the chance. And then, when Kaylee asked me to speak on the theme of layers, my elder millennial brain went immediately to an episode of Friends called The One Where Ross Got High. It's in season 6. And in the episode, Rachel tries to make an English trifle for Thanksgiving dinner. But the pages in the cookbook get stuck together, so she ends up making an English trifle / shepherd's pie. She declares it's a trifle. It's got all of these layers. First, there's a layer of ladyfingers, then a layer of jam, then custard, which I made from scratch, raspberries, more ladyfingers, then beef sauteed with peas and onions, then more custard, and then bananas, and then I just put some whipped cream on top. Truth be told, I've approached most things in life like Rachel approached this trifle, pursuing something sweet, hoping for the best, and assuming the recipe is right. But I'm here to tell you, the recipe is not always right. Rewind to a few years ago, and I was delivered 2 exceptionally sweet pieces of news 24 hours apart. I was to become the director of an organization that I had respected for most of my career, and I was going to have a baby. And they were both due at nearly the same time. Could I do either of these things? I asked myself. Maybe. Could I do both of these things? Less likely. But surely I wouldn't have been presented with these amazing opportunities simultaneously if I couldn't. So I seized them both, moving forward with a commitment and dedication I didn't know I had in me. Both the new art space and my baby were born merely 6 weeks apart, and I felt like there was nothing I couldn't do. Yes, this was due to my strengths and talents and ingenuity, but also to my fierce network of support. My husband, my parents, my friends and colleagues, everyone stepped up to ensure these sweet layers of personal and professional jam and custard laid perfectly atop one another as I stepped into working mommyhood. When my daughter was born, she unlocked a level of emotional congruence and simultaneity that I never knew existed. I felt everything all the time, and it was the hardest yet most extraordinary thing I've ever done. After 10 weeks at home with her, I went back to work. 10 weeks. Here's where the pages in my recipe book started to stick together. The global average weeks of maternity leave is 16 weeks, but many other nations offer a year. But I remember like it was yesterday. The last day of my leave, I was on a long walk with my daughter in her bassinet, listening to Sade's By Your Side, thinking about how I very much wouldn't be by hers, and sobbing silently while she slept. Being back at work, I felt like my brain was severed in two. My child that had once been in my body was permanently outside of it, and yet I was choosing to be physically away from her. How does one synthesize these two things? There are layers to these layers, and the multitudes of my identity are only a singular look at the multitudes of women who experience the proliferation of their core identities: woman, mother, wife, daughter, sister, friend. Hard not to think that Meredith Brooks was really onto something in her 1997 song, Bitch. Do we remember? Yes? Yeah? Okay. Like many of my overachiever, thank you, Kaylee. Do you have a microphone? No. Like many of my overachiever, people-pleasing brethren, I'm exceptionally good at making things look like they are perfect from the outside. Just like Rachel's trifle was layered delicately into the glass dish, the striations of jam and cream looked every bit the perfect confection, and one would never know chunks of savory beef and peas were hiding underneath. Outwardly, it appeared that I was gracefully handling the enormous demands of my professional role and the visceral demands of my family role. But I felt the layers collapsing, leaving a chaotic mixture of negative emotions, fear, guilt, and sadness. I was less and less capable of enjoying either of my roles, and they both suffered. In fact, all of my roles suffered. All of my relationships were strained, my cortisol levels were persistently high, and I realized that in order to succeed at one thing, the others would be irreparably harmed. Eventually, the dam gave way, and the recipe changed. I'm quite sure everyone here has had their recipe pages stick together at some point, and surely will again. For those of you familiar with the show Friends, the lovable but dim Joey devours the dish and famously said, "What's not to like? Custard, good. Jam, good. Meat, good." As it usually is with these sorts of tropes from the 90s and early aughts, it's the characters that bring comedic relief that sometimes offer the most profound take on life. The polarity of these flavors can define and amplify each other. They might not always taste great together, but they demarcate what's what. This is sweet and this is salty. And sometimes these things not only get stuck together, but are inextricably related. I came to understand that life can give you the wrong recipe for what will actually work for you. And that's when you have to change the recipe. But the lessons I learned from following the wrong recipe through to completion will serve me for the rest of my life. I got the sweet with the salty, and I now understand the complexity and beauty of their coexistence. At its core, Joey's response is really one of gratitude. He got to have his two favorite things together in one dish. As I reflect on this time in my life and other challenges that have percolated forth since, this is the approach that I find serves me the most. One that acknowledges and even celebrates the incongruous layers of life. We can't truly know the sweet without the salty, and we can't know true joy without heartache. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. And now, Carlos.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carlos. I do illustrations and postcards. Some of them are from DC. Today, I'm not here to talk about myself. There are stories we recite to ourselves until exhaustion, stories that vanish from our lives only to find us again later. The death of Francisco Sarabia was one of those for me. At the entrance of my hometown in northern Mexico stands a monument, a tribute to the prodigal son who died in a tragic plane crash in 1939. I grew up sharing his story with visitors at the town's only museum where housed the original plane that sealed his fate. But only recently, I discovered that the site of this accident, it was just miles from where I currently live, far from where we were both born. It was my interest for postage stamps that led me to rediscover his story. In order to get funding for his historic flight from Mexico City to New York City, Sarabia issued commemorative stamps that they are now highly prized. And so after 10 hours and 48 minutes, El Conquistador del Cielo landed in New York City with barely any gas remaining, beating the late Amelia Earhart's record by over 3 hours. And this captivated the press and the imagination of many people like me. After that, Sarabia flew to D.C. to deliver a letter to President Roosevelt. And on June 7th, the Mexican ace took off from Bolling Field to attempt another non-stop flight back home. But 4 minutes later, his plane crashed into the Potomac River before the eyes of his family and numerous diplomats who watched helplessly. In the 1945 newspapers of my hometown, alongside news of Nazi advances, you could follow what the press dubbed the apothecary's crime. Trinidad Escobedo had shot young Guillermo Quiñones. Escobedo claimed that he received a midnight call from a drunk man, someone he recognized as a former suitor of his daughter. And minutes later, Quiñones appeared at his door, and Trinidad shot him in the stomach from inside the apothecary. The wounded man took a taxi to a bar, as one does, and then collapsed and died shortly after. The police traced his steps and found evidence that incriminated Trinidad Escobedo, leading to a lengthy and dramatic trial marked by appeals, corruption, and surprises. During one attempted transfer to another facility, Escobedo escaped with 3 other prisoners. They found them at the bar, completely wasted, accompanied by their custodian. And despite repeated, this is another time, okay? Despite repeated appeals from the victim's family, he served only a minimal sentence. Trinidad Escobedo was my great-grandfather, and this story has remained a family secret that I have been uncovering through years of archival research. I'm still grappling with this meaning, like how do we process stories of violence when they are part of our family history? And as I continue to unravel the mystery, one thought keeps returning. Stories are powerful, and they will find you when the time is right. I was 15 when I was told I should join the workshop of Tomás Ledesma, a short, mild-mannered local artist who had studied with the second generation of Mexican muralists in Mexico City. But despite his gentle appearance, he has also been part of the Taller de Gráfica Popular that antagonized the government in 1968. He smelled of coffee, aftershave, and carried a cane. His workshop was a retreat for old-timers who would like to paint the same flower scene over and over. And I was the only young and aspiring artist there, so I received his special instruction, a vast knowledge of painting techniques, and my favorite was always the old fresco science that the Mexican muralists recover, and he adapted them with fast-drying acrylic paint. Instead of mixing colors on the palette, he taught us to apply very thin layers of paint, and so you mix the colors in the canvas, not too much outside the canvas, and layers. You know. This is what I say, the name of the movie. The layers are called veladuras, or thin veils. And though I wasn't not the most patient student, because remember I was 15, I absorbed the chromatic subtleties that now guide most of my work. And so 30 years later, my process still follows his teachings of patience and simplicity. 3 basic colors and their overlapping combinations. On the first day I hung out with Marco, I asked him, "Why are you alone?" A question he always resented. But that didn't stop us from bonding over beer, and that was the first of many such Fridays to follow. After classes, a bunch of us will religiously gather at bars, and invariably we'll end up in his house, where his enormous collections of CDs will serve as the soundtrack of Or Desmadre. I hold that space among my most precious memories, filled with Novo Hispanic treasures, orchids, and every piece of folk art imaginable. His kitchen was the repository of the most exotic spices, and he, always curious and extravagant, will generously host art students for sumptuous meals that will often stretch across entire weekends. And generous is the word that I often use to refer to Maestro Marco. In his solitude, he knew how to surround himself with people who loved him. And he understood well, in that deeply tragic and Mexican way, that life is short and precious and best lived in the company of others. A month ago, after some, let's say, disappointing news, I organized the Pedward Drawing Club in my neighborhood. And within 2 days of deleting Instagram from my phone, I created a website, I printed posters, I booked a room in my beloved library, and very soon more than 100 people joined the mailing list. Marco had a gift for creating memorable gatherings, inviting just the right people and providing just like the right amount of food and music to get everyone comfortable and dancing at the end. And like him, I aim to create a space where people can be themselves and celebrate their creativity. I hope you will join us in the future. Among his ever-changing wall decor, Marco kept a wooden calavera hanging with another one nestled in its belly. When I asked him about not having a spouse that day, he shared the heartbreaking story of losing his wife during childbirth. Marco understood deeply the fragile impermanence of life, and he taught me to embrace the present with gratitude and generosity. He died of cancer 4 years ago. A newspaper clipping from 1858 documents the sale of an enslaved family with children as young as 6-year-old. Among them was Isaac, who was enslaved in Missouri and separated from his family in 1861. At age 16, he escaped and joined the Union Scholar Heavy Artillery, and his name appears alongside many other black troops on the African-American Civil War Memorial on U Street. Isaac Blakely's story is remarkable in many ways, but what moves me the most is imagining his determination to find his family after the war. The family was divided and sold to different enslavers, and many acquired new last names. But despite all these hardships, Isaac never stopped searching for his relatives. He eventually found them in Mississippi and relocated them to Missouri, where he spent the rest of his life as a farmer and devoted man of faith. Isaac's story is dear to me because he is the great-great-great-grandfather of my daughters. And when reflecting on family and our deep search for belonging, I believe stories like his serve as the threads that weave generations together. And so, like a humble onion with its many layers, we too are meant to grow and multiply. Our stories and art spread like spores, finding fertile soil in other people's lives. We are shaped by the people we encounter, the deceased we honor, and the stories we gather along the way. These are just few of mine that inspire me to be a better ancestor. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. And now we have Fa.
Yay. I love it. Some friends call me Fa, and I was like, oh, yeah, she calls me Fa. She thinks I'm a friend. Thank you so much. So let's begin. Lawyer, human rights activist, singer, dancer, teacher, performer of many things, rock band frontwoman, alternative pop band back woman, kind of. I'll explain later. Political commentator, asylum seeker, refugee, nanny, au pair, paralegal, dance instructor, art installer, house cleaner, curator, volunteer extraordinaire, parade enthusiast, balloon handler, music video star for a bunch of local bands, etc. These are all me at some point in my life, and I'm sure I'm forgetting and reading quickly a bunch of other titles. I never quite found a title for me, at least in English. In Spanish, we do have a word todero, todera, todere, which literally translates to everythinger. I'm an everythinger. I do a little bit of everything. And again, layers to that. I do have independent curator in my bio for job purposes, but I know that I couldn't do what I do and the way I do it without bringing all of those past and possibly future layers of me. And we all do. These things intersect and blend into each other. So everything we do is traversed, but everything we've done and all the experiences we've had and shaped us throughout our lives. Now, when I was asked to do this talk, I thought, okay, this is my opportunity to talk about my curatorial practice a little bit more in depth, or maybe talk about the chaos that is being an asylum seeker in this country right now, or ever to be an asylum seeker. And, you know, just generally be this like super powerful, you can do it, never give up, how far you go, people power, woman power, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I think we've heard that all before. And to be honest, I do talk about that a lot. And if you want to know more about me, you can find me. I am very much online. I've been interviewed. I have been on TV shows. I have started writing recently. So if you want to know more about me and my work or my life in exile, there's plenty of information out there. Go to my website, Google me. Points if you know what the R stands for. If you know my first, last name, you'll find even more stuff about me online. So instead, I want to focus on the layers that we don't often talk about, at least in public. Not necessarily this is what I would brag about, you know, the stuff that we may hide under the rug. Shitty stuff. It's really weird that that photo exists. That's Canva. And yeah, like I hide under the rug and that appeared. So perplexing. But kind of what we do. We keep the smiley face. We're like, oh yeah, it's all good. No worries. And so, anyway, something that takes maybe a deeper conversation to know about me is that I am a survivor of domestic abuse in the hands of my father when I was very little. And that, that's something that doesn't necessarily come up quite quickly in conversation. And time and distance and lots of therapy, lots of different kinds of therapy has certainly helped. But for some reason, I thought that that would only apply or affect my romantic relationships, daddy issues. And I didn't think that it would affect other parts of my life because, work, it's not, life. It's, work-life balance. They're separate, and layers definitely don't blend, right? So I was like, okay, this is not going to affect me, whatever. And I've done a lot of therapy. I'm definitely in a better place. But I realized in hindsight how many times I have been hurt and neglected and abused in work situations. Either shitty bosses or shitty host families or shitty clients. Am I right? Like this one time, I got fired from a job for asking for extra hours. For context, I had been accepted into this museum program that would take a couple of days a week, was obviously unpaid, but it was amazing and it changed my life, and I would totally recommend people to do it. But because of that, I needed to compensate on another end, and I asked my boss, hey, can I do some extra time? Can I get some extra hours? I'll come other days. Can I figure something out? And I was met with well, if you want to work there so much, why don't you just leave? And so completely gaslighted, completely manipulative. At the time, I didn't have the language to, know gaslighting. And perhaps I didn't have the self-assurance to stand up for myself. I was younger, and even though I had quite a strong network of friends and, community, I didn't think that it was my place to I don't want to accuse this person. It's going to change the dynamics. We're all friends. So yeah, it felt weird. I just left and I suffered kind of in silence. But anyway, that happened 8 years ago, 10 years ago. Again, I was younger and inexperienced. So clearly, I was abused. I was taken advantage of because I didn't know any better. Or so I thought. Because then last year, at the tender age of 34, I just turned 35 on Tuesday. Just last year, I got fucked over again. Oh, I actually forgot to say, he was a he. The person who fucked me over the first time was a he, but I do believe that everybody can be an asshole. Last year, I got fucked over again, and this time it was a lady. Again, anybody can be an asshole. I was quite shocked because I wasn't expecting it from this person, and this woman for about a year was begging me to work with her, do something for me, come work for our organization. And I'm like, okay, what do you want me to do? I was like, whatever you want. I'm like, but what? Do you have money? What's the budget? No, we don't have money. I'm like, okay, well, somehow I got reeled into it, and I did come up with something really cool. I was really excited. Let's see where this partnership goes, and it just ended up being really bad. I was being mistreated, and then person was trying to steal my intellectual property. I started noticing how she was mistreating other people. Her workers who were not getting paid, they're all volunteers, is a whole other issue. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm out. I'm just gonna leave. This is not working out. And then she became even more belligerent, more aggressive, just not, piling proof that I should not have been working with her from the very beginning. And months in, I tell this colleague of mine what's happening, and she tells me, oh, I know her. I used to be her assistant. That woman's a psycho. And her words. And I was like, wow, I cannot believe I had no idea. This is a person that maybe we know, kind of respected, and I had no clue that this was happening. And then when talking to other people, everybody started saying the shitty stuff that had happened to them. So I started thinking about all the times that we're going through something really bad, especially at work, and especially in, this industry, we kind of know each other and we're all in each other's circles. But shit happens and we don't say it, and we're just perpetuating this shitty cycle. I know that maybe we're really strong and we're resilient and we can handle it ourselves. Also, there's the whole issue of like, don't burn that bridge. Don't, you wanna gossiping is not professional. And I do have like a whole other presentation about gossiping and the importance of it. I don't have time for it right now. But chisme, like it saves lives. The fact is that if we don't talk about certain things, we're not only holding on to something that will hurt us or is hurting us, but potentially putting other people in harm's way. Now, my mom is the absolute best. She literally saved our lives, and I'm so thankful for her strength. But it did take her a minute to speak up and ask for help and leave. And this colleague of mine, also, she kind of suffered in silence, had been abused by this boss, and I had no idea about it until it happened to me, until I found the same person. And I was like, wow. Again, I just got me thinking about all the times that we know what may be happening, but we don't say it out loud. And just wanted to use this time to talk about that layer, the layer we don't talk about, the layer we hide under the rug, the shitty layer that we cannot really brag about. Again, I would have been here, I was like, oh, I'm going to talk about all my achievements and how far I've come and the never give up kind of situation. But we've all been there. And so perhaps you know somebody that is going through some shitty stuff and are hiding it. Or maybe it's you. You're going through some shitty stuff and are not saying anything. So I want to take this opportunity to bring attention to that, share it, talk shit. Sometimes we need to do it, because if we don't talk about the bad stuff, how are we going to stop it from happening again? Or holding people accountable for when they do something, or at least letting each other know that we're not alone in this. Again, sometimes we need to talk shit, not to be petty, but to be honest and to try to heal and change things, and to make sure that the next person doesn't have to go through the same crap all by themselves. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, our wonderful speakers, Caitlin Berry, Carlos Carmendia, and Fabiola. Sorry, I always call you Fa Delgado. Wow. Such, we picked speakers that have such long bios, such long bios that you need to read on the website. Such achievements, such accolades, and yet when we gather every month, we're always sharing in our vulnerability. So I was really thank you for sharing in your vulnerability, and we're gonna ask you to do some more with some Q&A. So that's our next slide. Okay, we'll keep it here. If the three of you would come up, we can use this mic and also this. This is on? Yes. Let's give it up for our speakers, please. We have a couple of minutes for Q&A, and we have 3 mics being passed, so please, have at it.
Stories. Thank you very much for sharing them. Got a lot from them. So many of our layers are sort of thrust upon us and we have to deal with them, but occasionally we get to choose our layers. And I'm wondering, over the next year, what layer are you choosing to apply to yourself? How are you excited about that?
Yeah, well, Great question. Let's talk about it after. I think, when I said, like, well, I was younger and inexperienced, I was stupid. Of course, I was got taken advantage of. I think that like every year we get better, we get a little bit more, acute and smart about, what to do. And that's why you like maybe get out of certain situations and maybe, deal with, things. But I think I want to use my community more and not just speak of like, oh, you tell people when you're going through something bad. Like, I need to also be very vocal about things. But I'm really excited about working with other people. I've been an independent curator always on the side for like many years, and this is like one full year of I'm doing it on my own. But on my own doesn't mean really on your own. It means with your partners, with your friends, and your parents, and the people, and the tech folks, and the designer, and your assistant. And it's like so many people. So that's what I'm bringing. I'm like, I want to really hone that layer and not just do things by myself.
I'm just going to say that my layer for next year is going to be optimism. I know it sounds kind of cheesy, but that's kind of like the only weapon I can see I can use for the things ahead.
I'm going to take the flip side of that coin. And my layer for the year, and I decided this at the end of 2024, was saying no to things. As someone who perpetually says yes to everything, I'm really glad I said that yes to this, Kaylee. Don't get me wrong. But I think that, generally as creative people, we want to create things. We want to see things grow and be born. And sometimes it's too much and we got to say no. So no is my layer and my trifle. Yeah.
I like when you said you're going to say no. So for all of you, what are you saying hell yes to and hell no to? All right, that'll be all.
So what are we saying? Hell yes and hell no to? Oh, hell yes to kindness for me. We will not be able to make it through the next 4 years without it. And I'm always down for being warm and kind to each other. So a hell yes to kindness. And a hell no to divisiveness. We don't need more of that.
When I hear people say the next 4 years, I come from Venezuela. I escaped dictatorship. I am here on seeking political asylum, which I haven't gotten. I got married 10 years later, still waiting. There's about a 40-year wait list for my asylum to be even interviewed, to even start. I'm saying hell yes to unity and organization and preparing, because this is not going to end in 4 years. And if we're lucky, it'll end before 4 years. This person needs to be removed. And it's not going to happen if we stay still thinking that they're going to follow the Constitution and the law, because that's not what dictatorships work like. And so I'm saying hell no to American exceptionalism. Do you think that it may not happen, that it only happens in banana republics, it only happens in other countries, it doesn't happen here? It's already happening here. So,
Completely agree with that. I am saying yes to family, simplicity, and what I call movement, like things that you are always changing and being receptive to all those three. And I'm saying no to everything that is not that.
This is, I guess, for Carlos specifically, but for everybody as a whole. Carlos, I think you said the words, some combination of trying to be a good ancestor. Clearly, all y'all had the same goddamn question, and nobody said anything. I want more of that. What does that mean to you, and how would you invite us into that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as a person who likes to go into library and dig deep into archivals and like newspapers, etc., I always see like the people who lived back then, they are communicating to us, to the people who are curious, right? And so when I sit myself in front of my iPad to do a postcard of DC, like depicting people wearing specific clothes, I always have the idea that someone else is going to find it in the future. And that's going to be a link to me, right? And if there is someone that is going to be curious, and not to try to sound like fastidious, and if someone wants to look at me, I want to offer good things for them, right? I mean, and more specifically, like now I have two daughters, like one is 6, the other is 2. It's like, I mean, I know like it's not the same case for everyone, but that has opened my world in a very different way. And so when I think now on my ancestors and I look at them and try to learn as much as I can, I know that people are complex. There's like complex personalities, but I wouldn't be here without them. And so I want to honor that by also passing along those stories that inspire me. I'm sure if you guys want to expand on that.
I mean, all of that ditto, copy paste. I don't have kids yet, but when I do, I also want to.
You don't have to have kids.
Yeah. I was a nanny for so many years. When I first came to the country, I was an au pair and I was a nanny, and definitely went through some shitty stuff. Some host families were not, and some were amazing, and they really, again, saved my life. And I do think a lot about that. It's like, oh, we're here, and there's always this like labor, extractivist labor that's not good enough for you. That's not like, we're not going to give you a visa. Who do you think you are? But you're taking care of America's children, and you're taking care of all these families. So that's definitely something that, like, well, I hope that I'm a good ancestor to all those kids that thought that they're Venezuelan because they were taken care by a Venezuelan nanny and like were and ate arepas and still do. That's like my proselytization of, but also in like the work angle, I recently started a project called Future Forebears, and it comes out a lot of inspiration, in the art world. As a curator, I see that there's a lack of not just representation, it's getting better, but support, and like really sustained support, investment in Latino, Latinx artists. And so when I see all these incredible, initiatives like Art Noir, and it's like, okay, like how do I make that happen for Latinos? So future forebears, like the people that are here today will be at some point the ancestors for the artists that are coming up. And we are also really deeply inspired and supported by those who have come before us. So if you want to follow us on Instagram, Future Forebears, and yeah, stay tuned for possible, future conversations and other programs that will come up.
You may remember that I said I'm from Birmingham, Alabama. I want to be a terrible ancestor to most of my ancestors. There are a couple. My family has deep roots in Alabama and Mississippi.
Thank you, Shinji.
So, there are only certain people in my family I want to be a good ancestor for. But I want to create new opportunities for, my daughter and maybe her children and my nieces and nephews and all of, the people who come after me to look back and not be horribly ashamed of what their family did generations before. And so that's what I'm working on now. And I hope to create that opportunity for the future.
Hi. So I know you all have really